Howdy, we're going live here. I'm going to talk about a couple of things. I'm inking Luigi here, and I'm going to kind of teach you a little bit about drawing right now. And I want to talk a little bit about kind of clothing and how that works, and a lot of people's kind of fear of clothing in general. So we're just going to talk about clothes. So right off the bat, I want to talk really quickly that clothes is dictated by what's underneath, right? So if you have like, let's go over here. Where do I want this off? Let's go over here on this side. So if you have like, let's say your shoulder, let's have like a pseudo shoulder shape, right? Because of gravity, right, as that acts upon it, the cloth is going to kind of, let's just say, conform to the actual shape of the arm underneath it. And underneath, it's going to hang a little bit based on the cloth itself because of gravity. Gravity is going to pull down on that, right? So just kind of reiterate. When you're drawing clothing, like I said, you got to think about gravity and how that's acting upon kind of the shape underneath it, right? So if you have the arm right there, gravity's going to pull down, and you're going to kind of see the shape of the arm underneath, depending on the cloth. And then same thing, it's going to pull down under here, creating a bit of a dip, right? Again, depending on the cloth. Different cloths, like something that doesn't move as easily, won't be like that. Something that maybe, let me ink this eye right here. Something that won't be, basically like stiffer material are going to act upon different things. But it all pretty much stems from underneath, right? And that's kind of something, that's kind of a reason why you should really start to learn kind of different aspects of like anatomy. I encourage that right off the bat. It's never too early to learn maybe things in anatomy in general, because I know that in the beginning it seems very, it's like, why are we learning this, right? It's like, I'm not a doctor, like why do I have to like learn this? But I mean, the truth is, we're not just going to be drawing like, I mean, the truth is when we're drawing stuff, we really need to understand the balance between, you know, like human anatomy and stuff like that. Like I was telling you, I always think of the body as like tubes, right? And that's like simple shapes, and that's the core of it, right? But if you're drawing like a muscle man or some anything like, you know, superhero or lots of stuff, you have to know anatomy really well for it to look good. On top of that, even your clothed stuff is going to look better if you know anatomy. So we're going to go over that in a second here, a little bit more into that concept. I'm just kind of inking Luigi's eyes over here, right? There's a little bit more of a realistic Luigi as opposed to some of the other ones I did. Some of the other ones I did were a little bit like leaning in the cartoony universe, but more real. But this one, you know, we're inking here. And honestly, when you ink, it's scary, right? Because when you ink, you're just getting rid of the pencil underneath, right? So it's pretty scary to ink over your pencils. Sometimes you're like, oh no, this is it. It's going to be permanent now. But you got to be a little bit loose and casual about it. At least if you're doing it within sketches. And then the looser your hand is, the better it's going to work. Like basically the cleaner it'll work out pretty much. But yeah, let's go over a little bit more about clothing here in a second. I'm just kind of like inking this right here. Right on. Sweet. Sweet. But yeah. So let's kind of go back into cloth and kind of how to work that out, you know. Clothing is honestly also something that people just kind of fear in drawing, and I've kind of been there as well. Right now I'm kind of like afraid of color. I mean, I know color, but like I'm afraid to do a lot of color stuff, so I'm like having to take my own advice with color right now. So, but all right, let's go over here, and let's... Right after the edge of this right here, I'm going to continue like the second part of the about the clothes lesson here. All right, cool. And let's get into the next part of clothing I was talking about. So I'm going to recap what I was saying about clothing a second ago. When you're drawing clothing, okay, again, gravity acts upon it. So it's important to know what's underneath so that we have a good idea of how the clothing is going to fit, right? Whether it be super tight or not tight or whatever. So one thing to remember, gravity is acting upon it. So it's pulling down. The cloth itself is pulling down, and it might conform to the shape of the top part a little bit more than the bottom, right? It might conform a little bit more to what's underneath because of that gravity falling upon it. A lot of that stuff's going to be flat on the top. And the bottom is going to hang, depending on, the seams and then some. You're going to have a little bit of a give, a little bit of a hang. And it's not always the case. It depends on the cloth, depends on how much cloth, etc. But it's something to keep in mind. You might throw a little bit of a looser kind of bit of garment here to kind of give it a little bit more realism. But yeah, that would be number one. Number two, as far as clothing goes, folding, and this is something that I'll just tell you verbally, folding and folds, there is kind of like a science to that. But to be honest, man, folding, when people say stuff like, oh, it looked like that in the reference, let's say the cloth looked like that in the reference. Like when people do that for clothing, especially if it's bunched up, if it's loose clothing, man, you're going to really have to design it out because sometimes it's just like clothing just looks straight. Like if it's bunched up clothing, like the way it's folded, sometimes it just looks really ugly. So you kind of have to take your artistic merit pretty quickly. Not for everything, of course, right? If it's really tight clothing and there's just like some folds in the armpit or whatever, you don't have to. But then if there's some bunching up over here, that's going to change every time they move. And it's almost like it's very hard for it to be consistent. So you're just going to have to deal with it. And also you're dealing with seams, right? Like sometimes right here, let's just throw one in there. There's like a seam, right? Where they sewed the outfit, right? There's going to be where they sewed that outfit together. Dang, I should have put a sleeve there. Oh, well, let's see into that. But there's like a seam of where they put that. And then that seam also causes these tension lines sometimes. So you're going to have to kind of be aware of that. I would recommend doing a lot of reference stuff from it, but at the same time, you're going to have to remember kind of where these tension points kind of sometimes end up. Like where would they be? Tension would be obviously in the armpit, obviously in the elbow when they do that, and then the seams. That's normally where I see the most tension. And then it gets wilder and wilder, right? The more you want to make them do like crazy stuff. Like if you want to make them more of superheroes, I think that's probably one of the cool, like within superheroes, right? A lot of that stuff will go all over the place, depending if they're wearing like loose clothing. I see a lot with like capes. Let's go over here. Just a little bit more of Luigi right there. Boom. But those are the two things I would remember when it comes to drawing clothing at all. It would be the fact that gravity acts upon it. Again, we're reviewing this a couple of times, so remember it. Remember that gravity acts upon the clothing that you wear, and so it's going to be it's going to conform a little more to the top, on the top portion of anything. And at the same time, like I was saying, there is tension points throughout clothing. There's different kinds of folds as well, and that can help you for sure. Like I believe this is called a diaper fold? I can't remember. I did a whole lesson thing, and I'm going to put it in the lessons because I think it's vital to know those. But I think an issue people have sometimes when they learn the types of folds, they become very, very, what do you call it? They become very, very restricted by the kinds of folds. Like, no, it has to be this exact diaper fold, right? Or half lock fold or something like that. You don't have to be, totally stuck in that. But that is a typical, what do you call that? That is a very typical beginner or intermediate thing, right? To get stuck in the formulas that we formulate. You want to learn the rules so that you break them, but you definitely don't want to break them unless you know them first, right? Because if you don't know them and you just try it, like, because I see that a lot, right, within drawing, you're just like, oh, I'm just going to break them right off the bat. It's like, okay. And it just looks terrible. You don't want to do that. You want to learn, make sure you got them, and then you're like, okay, cool. Now I have that in my back. I have that formula in my back pocket so that I can I can absolutely make, you're like, okay, cool. Now I have that in my back. I have that formula in my back pocket so that I can, um, I can absolutely make sure that the other things are, going to make sense. Mindset. Yeah, I suppose mindset definitely works. I would say that's one of the biggest things that got me through. That's probably one of the biggest things that got me through that tough period of plateaus. Because there's sometimes like you're training every which way that you need to train, right? You have everything that you need, but somehow you're still not getting better. And you're like, what's going on here? Right? And I think a lot of that can be definite mindset. For me, it totally was. Oh my gosh, it totally was mindset. It was because I kept putting myself under this insane amount of pressure where I was like, I've trained this long, whatever it was. I should be at this level, but I am not, right? And then I would put this insane amount of pressure on myself, which would ironically make me much worse, because I just kept screwing up drawings. So you kind of don't want to put yourself under pressure. And I think the biggest way to not do that is to kind of practice a lot, but also, it's not just that, because I practiced a ton. It's also just to try to have fun with it. And, you kind of think like, no, this is just fun. I mean, obviously there's goals that you have, but you're kind of like, oh, this is like, why did I get into this process to begin with? And that's why I'm emphasizing that, like, I don't know, in every other video. I don't know if you heard me in the other ones, but every other video I'm saying like, remember to have fun, remember to have fun, remember to have fun. Because when you're starting to become a little bit better, especially into intermediate and novice, you definitely start to stop having fun. You're just like, whoa, I need to do this now. Like, for myself and for, to prove to everybody that I can do, you start to bring in all this bizarre mental baggage, and, it starts not becoming fun. And then ironically, it starts to slow you down, it slows down your progress and you see some people that just kind of have fun and you're like, oh, cool. Wow. They're like way better than they should be. And they're just messing around and okay, they discovered something there where they really like doing. And, you can kind of take that and really kind of run with it. So yeah, it's fascinating how mindset really affects stuff. So you have to do it kind of in unison, You have to kind of like see yourself as like, okay, this is fun stuff, and it's a balance, right? And you want to get better. Anyways, I kind of detoured into that, but that's pretty much it for the clothing, as I was talking about, really fast. So the clothing again was gravity acts upon, this is like the fourth time I'm just recapping it, so gravity acts upon the clothing that you're wearing, which is why you really should learn anatomy. Because like right here, he's got the deltoid, right? I know that. And then the bicep. So I can put a little bit of this little bump there because I know that. It's not just like a tube, right? A tube is the beginning, right? But you want to throw a little bit of musculature on there if it's like a character that maybe has muscle, right? If it doesn't have muscle, then so be it. So learning that anatomy for, the clothing would help. And then also remember the tension points that are kind of all over the place right here with your, like in the seams. So maybe get into clothing, like a little. You don't have to get into it hard. I'm sorry. Let me rephrase it. Just like look at your own clothing, right? Look at this. Look at where the seams are, and just kind of be curious about it. You're like, oh, okay. Like see how your own clothes bend and stuff like that. Kind of being aware of that stuff, again, will translate to drawing clothing better. But anyways, that's pretty much it. I was just going to come on for 10 minutes. See you guys later. I'm starting to go live every day now, so I feel really good about it. And I'm putting these on YouTube, so go check those out on YouTube as well. I'll put the link in the description there soon. I think it's just Sketch Monster Daily. I have a couple of two Sketch Monster accounts. I think there's Sketch Monster and then Sketch Monster, which I post once in a while, which is just me talking about stuff. Like there's not much drawing anymore. There's more just me just talking about concepts. And then Sketch Monster Daily, which is these lives and videos like that. But thanks so much. I'll see you tomorrow, okay? Bang! Ow!